The race for president is underway as the GOP candidates squared off in Milwaukee at a big debate. But the frontrunner, former President Trump, was notably absent. Who were the big winners and losers of the evening, and what of President Trump? Pollster John McLaughlin joins us. And Archbishop Fulton Sheen's cause for canonization has been stalled. But new developments may signal some long-awaited progress. Executive Director of the Sheen Foundation, Msgr Jason Gray, is here with an update. And the Christian community in Armenia continues to be under threat from an Azerbaijani blockade in the region. Is a humanitarian disaster looming? An expert joins us with the latest. The World Over begins right now.
Now, Raymond Arroyo.
A warm welcome to all of you joining us in the United States and the world over. If you'd like to comment on tonight's show, send me a tweet or an X. I'm at Raymond Arroyo still. Lots to cover. Let's begin. I want to dive right into this first GOP debate on Wednesday and the former president's interview with Tucker Carlson, as well as how the indictments against the president could affect his run. Joining us now, pollster John McLaughlin. John, thank you so much for coming. At Wednesday night's GOP debate, 8 presidential candidates sparred against each other, but without the GOP frontrunner, President Trump, there. Here's what former Vice President Mike Pence had to say about his ex-boss's absence.
I think it was a missed opportunity for President Trump not to be here.
John, your thoughts. Did Donald Trump miss an opportunity that might harm his chances for the nomination? I mean, it seems like his absence gave the others a chance to break out unchallenged.
No, we have a full disclosure. I work for President Trump, and we've released a poll today where he leads the field, where he has 51% of the vote. Ramaswamy is in second place at 13%, and Ron DeSantis has fallen to 9%. Others are, Mike Pence and Nikki Haley are 4%. One-on-one against Ron DeSantis. Trump's beating him 72-28. What's important about that is back in January, Trump led the field 42 to DeSantis' 31. It was DeSantis and him were close at 52 for Trump and 40 for DeSantis. Now it's all gone away, and the reason is because in this poll today, Donald Trump is beating Joe Biden 47-43, and rather than go into the debate, he's got to prepare to be arraigned. This is the 4th indictment of a former U.S. president within 5 months that is being engineered by a corrupt President Biden. And, most voters looking at this, they're saying they want to vote on the election. 56% of all voters want to vote on the election. They don't want the courts to decide, only 34%. They see a double standard of justice, 59%. So, Donald Trump, these other candidates, if they wanted to do something constructive, like when Dr. King, those of us who remember the civil rights struggle, Dr. King used to be arrested and all the civil rights leaders would go with him. Here you've got all these Republicans, sniping at Trump. If they had any decent poll numbers, Joe Biden would indict them too. I mean, this is an existential threat to the Republican Party and an existential threat to political opposition and free speech in the United States.
John, not to interrupt you, but we should tell people, and it's breaking today, Elon Musk has now been sued by the Biden administration, claiming that his brand X doesn't hire refugees at a large enough number. So there is something happening with the use of the federal government and these institutions to target political opponents, or at least that's the appearance. I want to talk for a moment about that youngest contender in the race, 38-year-old entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy. He received a lot of attention from his opponents last night. He was piled on a number of times for his youth and inexperience. Here's a bit of his exchange regarding foreign policy and Ukraine.
Mr. Ramaswamy, you would not support an increase of funding to Ukraine? I would not. And I think that this is disastrous, that we are protecting against an invasion across somebody else's border when we should use those same military resources to prevent across the invasion of our own southern border here in the United States.
So the reality make America less safe. You have no foreign policy experience, and it shows.
And you know, let us be honest as Republicans. I'm the only person on the stage who isn't bought and paid for, so I can say this. The climate change agenda is a hoax.
Hold on. I've had enough. I've had enough already tonight of a guy who sounds like ChatGPT standing up here. And the last person in one of these debates, Brett, who stood in the middle of the stage and said, "What's a skinny guy with an odd last name doing up here?" was Barack Obama, and I'm afraid we're dealing with the same type of amateur standing on stage tonight.
It got pretty heated, John. Did Ramaswamy hold his own, or was he exposed?
No, I think it might have backfired a little bit because when they all pile on like that, he gets the center of attention. And the key thing in a debate when you have 8 people like that is to have attention. And he had a point of view that's different than the others. But still, you know, they're all, it's Donald Trump, what's going on right now in the United States. Trump is sucking the oxygen away from these opponents because he's dealing with Joe Biden trying to put him in jail rather than lose an election to him. So these other candidates, when they're sniping at each other, it really doesn't matter to the average Republican. The average Republican is saying the country's on the wrong track. 67% of all the voters see that. Almost 2/3 are saying that the economy is on the wrong track. The majority say we're in a recession. 83% say they've been negatively impacted by inflation. And they're saying when Trump was president, these problems were solved. We were paying $2 a gallon for gas. I wasn't worried about my heating bills going up. I could afford to buy a new home.
Before I turn to Trump, give me your best take on the polling vis-a-vis Ukraine. For some reason, Ukraine was a big topic of conversation the other night, and obviously the Biden administration is throwing hundreds of billions of dollars at the country. How is it polling among Americans at this point?
Oh, right. Well, first of all, right now, people think this war needs to end. They need, you know, we need peace. They don't like what Russia's doing as an aggressor. But I also do work in Eastern Europe where I have worked for democracies and NATO allies over there. And they're afraid that the Russians may go into their country. But they're also afraid that Joe Biden's too weak to back them up. And what's gone on with American foreign policies, ever since Biden surrendered Afghanistan, it's been a signal to our enemies that, you know, we're not going to stop them. When Trump was president, you know, we basically, Putin wouldn't go into Ukraine. He was afraid because Donald Trump, you know, was somebody who was going to stand up. And so the Ukrainian issue right now is a problem because Biden's still president. He's very weak, and Americans are concerned that he's not going to stand up for freedom and democracy. And so he's sending them money, and people aren't sure how it's being spent. But the war, the tragedy of that war is still going on.
John, you mentioned a moment ago Trump was the centerpiece of that debate, even though he wasn't there. Here's a bit of the back and forth and whether Trump would have their support if nominated. Watch.
Look, here's the bottom line. Someone's got to stop normalizing this conduct. Okay? Now, whether or not you believe that the criminal charges are right or wrong, the conduct is beneath the office of President of the United States.
We have to look at the fact that 3/4 of Americans don't want a rematch between Trump and Biden. And we have to face the fact that Trump is the most disliked politician in America. We can't win a general election that way.
Here's the thing.
This
election is not about January 6th of 2021. It's about January 20th of 2025, when the next president is going to take office.
John, is any of this having an impact? I mean, Trump is at 52% in some of the latest polls, and I know you have that new one out where he's even higher.
Right. And what the difference is, see, right now, you know, the voters are looking at this and they're afraid because 62% agree that if Biden can do this to Donald Trump, he could prosecute any of his political opponents. That's a poll that we took in June. And you got 58% saying they're concerned that if they can weaponize the DOJ with the FBI and the IRS, they'll actually go after any American citizen. So there's a real fear of basically an overreach by Biden and his administration, that in order to win an election and stop a political opponent that could beat him, that basically they're undermining democracy in the United States. They're denying people civil rights, and it extends to, remember when the Biden FBI was investigating Catholics because they were going to mass, etc., or going to Latin mass, and then they were investigating parents that were concerned about what's going on in their schools. So there's something going on in the United States right now where they're looking at Joe Biden and saying he's going too far. And they're seeing the stories of corruption where allegedly they took tens of millions of dollars from foreign countries. And people are saying our government's corrupt, our system's broken, and we've got a president who's just gone too far, and he's too weak, and he's not successful. So I think people are looking at this and saying there's something really wrong here, and that's why Donald Trump's still ahead in the polls. That's why he's going up.
Yeah, what's shaping up to be the big news of the week is President Trump turning himself in to these authorities in Georgia. I figured he'd use Thursday because it followed the debate. He sucks all the oxygen out of the room and the news cycle. He's being, as you know, charged with attempting to overturn the 2020 election. My question is this: what impact are these indictments having on Trump's candidacy?
It's helping him because it's exposing the political opposition. So, I mean, I worked last year for Prime Minister Netanyahu in Israel, and he had not similar, but he had corruption charges against him. And the whole media in Israel was against him. What the Netanyahu campaign did was they live streamed the corruption trial, and the whole thing fell apart. It was exposed as a political prosecution. Donald Trump's being filmed and videoed when he's before this judge, when he's being arraigned by DA Willis in Fulton County. And I think Americans are appalled by it because they want to vote in the election. We want to have a real campaign to talk about things that are affecting people, whether it's the economy, inflation, national security, crime, immigration. They want to discuss those issues. And right now they're being exposed with this basically political prosecution of Donald Trump because he's leading Joe Biden in the polls, and people it's too much. They're being way too much.
And John, this Fulton County made-for-television event could backfire on them. Their lead actor here is unpredictable. But according to a recent Reuters poll, and this is a question I know a lot of people have, if the president is convicted of the crime, never mind whether it's illicit charge or not, if he is convicted, 52% of Republicans say, according to a Reuters poll, they would not vote for President Trump. What is your polling telling you?
Well, it's the backlash is working among Republicans. That's why he's still going ahead. I mean, that Reuters, I don't like the way they frame that question, because the reality of this is most voters see this as Joe Biden just trying to stop his political opponent from beating him in the election next November. So right now, it's a dangerous time in American history because we've got a weaponized Department of Justice. You have a sitting president who's trying to cover up his corruption by indicting his political opponent and trying to get him convicted. I mean, those 1870 laws that Jack Smith is prosecuting under, one has a 20-year prison term, another one has the death penalty. I mean, this is bizarre. This is the kind of things that go on in banana republics, not the United States of America.
I want to shift gears to abortion rights, which has become a hot topic and certainly was during this debate. Watch this.
We need to stop demonizing this issue. This is talking about the fact that unelected justices didn't need to decide something this personal, because it's personal for every woman and man. Now it's been put in the hands of the people. That's great. When it comes to a federal ban, let's be honest with the American people and say it will take 60 Senate votes. It will take a majority of the House. So in order to do that, let's find consensus.
John, your thoughts on where this abortion issue is developing within the GOP since Roe was overturned. And what of Nikki Haley's point that a federal ban is irrelevant without the votes in the Senate? And why is it a federal issue when the feds returned it to the states?
Well, if you look at whether people consider themselves pro-life or pro-abortion, when you look at the longer span of time, back in the 90s, 5-3, most voters would tell us that they were pro-choice. Now, because of the sonogram generation moving into the electorate, where they realize life it begins at some point way before abortion, is banned illegal. And a lot of states, they have, abortion up until the 9th month. I think most Americans were very happy that President Trump's Supreme Court justices allowed it to go back to the states, and a lot of states have moved the laws to protect life. So the Republican Party is a pro-life party. The Democrat Party is becoming abortion on demand up until the 9th month party, and they're out of sync with American public opinion. So I think Republicans who basically say we need to advance the cause of life, we need to say human life has value, that's working in the electorate right now, and that's why the Republicans have control of Congress, at least the House, and could have control of the Senate after the next election.
Before we run out of time, President Trump opted out of the debate in Milwaukee, but he chose to appear with Tucker Carlson for a 40-minute conversation on X or Twitter. Here's my question. Was that a smart move on Trump's part from a messaging standpoint to, grab this audience out in online or on their phones? And was he able to get more across to a public outside of the debate environment in this case?
I think it was the right move because, to go through the stress of a debate and have the adrenaline moving and then the next day go get arraigned before a Soros district attorney that has ties to Joe Biden is the next day. That's a lot of stress. And he just, he's very strong. He accepts it. He goes through this with, dignity and, they're making him a sympathetic figure. He could end up being the Nelson Mandela of America. This is like crazy. And so for him to have not appeared in the debate and do the counter program with Tucker Carlson, which as of last report that I saw, there's over 250 million views of that interview, which is astounding for the internet. So I think he did the right thing in terms of, he's got a bigger challenge. We got to beat Joe Biden. That's the most important thing that Donald Trump can do for the next election, and that's what he's focused on. And that debate seems to have been a missed opportunity for the Republicans, because if they don't stand up for him and his right to run as the opposition candidate, none of them are going to be successful, because right now, the Republican Party is facing an existential threat from the Democrats, because if they have their way, they will use the justice system, they will use the FBI, they will use the IRS to defeat their political opponents, and we will have lost a free and fair democracy in the United States and free and fair elections. So, this is an important time in our history.
John McLaughlin of McLaughlin Associates and President Trump's pollster, thank you for being here.
Thank you for the opportunity.
As regular viewers know, we have been covering the ongoing saga involving the cause of Archbishop Fulton Sheen for decades. In full disclosure, I was a member of the original foundation that moved his cause for sainthood over 20 years ago. In 2019, after 3 years of legal battles, the Archdiocese of New York finally released the late televangelist's remains to his home diocese in Peoria, allowing his cause to continue and proceed. However, a bankruptcy process in the Diocese of Rochester, New York, where Sheen once served as bishop, provided yet another roadblock to the advancement of the cause. Joining me now with an update on the status of the Sheen Cause for Sainthood, is the executive director of the Archbishop Fulton Sheen Foundation, Monsignor Jason Gray. He joins us from the Sheen Museum in Peoria. Thank you so much for being here, Monsignor. As I mentioned before, the Diocese of Peoria, it finally received Archbishop Sheen's remains in 2019. That seemed to resolve the last obstacle to the cause. Then weeks before he was to be beatified, the cause was halted. Please explain to viewers how the financial crisis in Rochester had put a halt to the Sheen cause.
Sure. And that does take us back 4 years. It's hard to imagine that much time has passed. But in 2019, it was in July that the miracle itself was approved by Pope Francis. And so we were ready to go. We had actually been privately, we had been negotiating a date of September 20th, 2019 for his beatification. That would have been Sheen's 100th anniversary of priesthood ordination. But when it wasn't just the bankruptcy in New York, but it was also in Rochester, but it was also the fact that there had been a waiver of the statute of limitations. It really was not known at the time whether there would be new allegations of which we really knew nothing. So there was a concern that something might come forward. And so out of an abundance of caution, the Holy See was hesitant. We also received some documents that raised a question as to whether or not Archbishop Sheen had handled any abuse cases improperly. And we got a hold of those documents. We researched them carefully. And we actually, from Peoria, we went to the Congregation of Saints and the Secretary of State in Rome and made a presentation to prove to them without any doubt that Sheen did handle those cases correctly. He had one case of an abuser he got out of ministry, and a second case of a priest who wanted back into ministry, and Sheen would not assign him. He was assigned by the next bishop of Rochester, but Sheen himself did not assign anyone who had been an abuser. So we proved that to Rome, and Rome was actually satisfied with that. And with that, the delayed September date now became a December date. So then we were up to December 22nd, 2019, and that was public. So we had announced that as a date for beatification. But there was still at the same time the concern over the investigation the state of New York was going to do into all the dioceses in New York. The Attorney General's report was just being undertaken. And so out of an abundance of caution, not knowing what else might come forward, it was just considered more prudent to suspend the cause at the time.
Well, but now, Monsignor, that those bankruptcy proceedings in Rochester are really wrapping up, what is the status now, and how might things proceed from here? I mean, it seems like the obstacles, at least the worries and concerns about the unknown, are now known.
It's true. That's true. When the window closed for reporting cases of abuse, the statute of limitations waiver ended, and the bankruptcy filing is nearing its completion. So we actually employed a law firm in New York that works with the different dioceses in the state, and we actually did a thorough review of every case that had been presented, and we were able to demonstrate that no case had been brought forward that in any way impugned Sheen. I think it's safe to say that I don't think any cause for beatification has been subjected to more scrutiny than Archbishop Sheen, both ecclesiastically and civilly. And in all of this, not only has nothing been found to impugn Sheen, but I think his heroic virtues have been confirmed. As I would like to say, Sheen is clean, and we can prove that. So we're
I like that.
confident about,
You should do up those T-shirts and sell them at the museum. Sheen is clean, free the cause. That's what I'm going to start. That's going to be my banner here. Throughout this process, Monsignor, have there been any legitimate claims or accusations against the late Archbishop Sheen that would further delay his cause for sainthood?
There have not.
In your study?
Yeah, there have not, and we're able to disprove any questions about anything that would even be alleged. So we're able to make that clear. And in fact, in September of 2022, then a group from Peoria, we went over again just to present these renewed findings and the research that had been done through the law firm. And so we actually met with Cardinal Semeraro and Saints. We met with Cardinal Parolin, Secretary of State, and presented all this material. Rome was actually very clear that there's no problem in the Holy See with this cause. The concerns have been raised on the other side of the pond. It's members of the U.S. hierarchy. And so out of just concern and an abundance of caution, there's just hesitation until we feel like there's no doubts remaining. But if it takes the Attorney General's report to demonstrate what we already know, what we've already proven, we want to go forward with the unanimous support of the entire Bishops' Conference. And I'm sure that we'll get there.
Well, I know there were some archbishops who were concerned, and it does connect to many of the things we're discussing, the bankruptcy proceedings and the possibility of some connection to abuse here. So they put this on hold. But Tell us about the other part of this, which is at this point, Sheen already has the miracle in place. I mean, it's already been approved. So is there any reason from where you stand to hold up this cause and to stop him from being at least beatified at this point?
It's really just a question of prudence. And if, like I mentioned, the Attorney General in New York has not released a report yet, we know what has been reported, so we're confident that that's also going to vindicate Sheen. If we need to wait for that, then I'd like to go forward with that unanimous support of all the bishops, which I'm sure we will have, and this will be the opportunity to beatify the first American-born bishop in the United States, as well as America's bishop, as he would have been called back in the day when he was on television.
Monsignor, before I let you go, assuming these matters are settled, do you have any plans, do the foundation have any plans of bringing these findings before the entire body of bishops and getting them to just give it a final amen so that it has their support when you go back to Rome?
If there are any questions, when we have all the documentation and we have all the proof, so if there's anything that we need to demonstrate, these are kind of sad things, and it's a very difficult time in the church to deal with cases of abuse. So I know it's not something that I think we want to dwell on, but if there's need for any clarity, we can offer it. We've got everything that would be necessary to demonstrate Sheen's heroic virtue, without a doubt.
Yeah, well, we knew many of these things years ago. That, you know, I know there were the allegations that, there was an abuser in Rochester, but it turns out Sheen pulled him out of ministry. It was the successor that returned him to it. So, as you said earlier, Monsignor, and I love the slogan, Sheen is clean. I love that.
That's
so
right.
we will leave it there. Please, Monsignor Gray, keep us updated on this cause. We obviously want to see this go to the next level. And I know many of the people who watch not only our program, but EWTN, they continue to watch Archbishop Sheen. And he was so prophetic on so many fronts. It would be a tragedy if this cause didn't move forward, given that he's met all the benchmarks. I'm sure
that it will. And Sheen is someone that the church needs, I think, more today than ever. And so we look forward to having him beatified, which I know will happen. I'm confident of that. And we can say, God love you, as Sheen himself would always say.
I'll erase the chalkboard when you're done. For the latest on the Archbishop Sheen Foundation and the Servant of God, Fulton Sheen's cause for canonization, visit celebratesheen.com. Thank you, Monsignor.
Excellent. Thank you.
The nation of Armenia became the first country in history to have established Christianity as its official religion. Despite this long history, the Armenian people have been subjected to persecution, most notably during the Armenian genocide at the hands of the Ottoman Turks during the First World War. Now, since December of last year, Azerbaijan has blocked Artsakh, which is an Armenian republic, attempting to drive the people out of their homeland. We reported on this back in July. Here tonight with an update on the blockade and the damage it's causing the Christian community in the region is Special Advisor to the Philos Foundation and Armenian affairs expert Simone Rizkallah. Thank you so much for being here, Simone. We had Bishop Mikhail Muradian in July, and he painted a very stark picture of the plight of Armenian Christians due to this blockade. 1 month later, where do we stand?
Although there has been, thanks to you and others who have brought attention to this issue, there has been more media attention, but certainly not enough. And in terms of the situation for the Armenian Christians in Artsakh and the Nagorno-Karabakh, things they're more and more dire.
Earlier this week, there were reports that the blockade might be easing due to the movement of a few Armenians across that Nagorno-Karabakh blockade zone. Is this an indication that a deal is on the horizon? What are the negotiations? Are there negotiations going on at this point?
Certainly the Azeris want the perception that there's an easing of the blockade, and the way that perception is being perpetuated is that, for example, college students who have dual citizenship with Russia, Russian passports, Russia is, friendlier and friendlier with Azerbaijan, are permitted to leave Artsakh, Nagorno-Karabakh, but that's a one-way exit ticket. They won't be able to come back. And so it looks like, so it looks like, oh, look, see, there's people there's movement happening. but that is more a PR stunt than anything else.
If the blockade's allowed to continue, tell us what the immediate result might be. I mean, there has been talk, you mentioned it earlier, that a famine might ensue. When Bishop Murdian was here, he spoke of children essentially being starved.
Yeah, I mean, that is still happening, and it's only increasing in its drama in the coming weeks. We have reports of, for example, I think it was last week, a 40-year-old who died of starvation, and that was tweeted out. The lack of fuel, so the lack of transport is very real. The reports of miscarriages because ambulances don't have the fuel to go take the women to get help. So it's dramatic. It sounds dramatic because it actually is dramatic.
There are reports of Azerbaijani troops shooting at Armenian outposts along the border. Also, I read this week Armenian college students, and you mentioned this a moment ago, leaving the region because the schools in Artsakh are not reopening in the fall term. How devastating is that? And are there any chances that these schools and universities might reopen?
I mean, I don't know how they possibly could. I think the question is how. For school children, first, how do you get there if there's no fuel? The weather conditions, depending on the season. They're hungry. They're traumatized from living under a blockade for 8 months. I mean, how do you go to school in those conditions? The teachers are hungry. Whatever wheat and vegetables and fruit have been planted. I mean, the Azeris are shooting at farmers. So even though in the springtime there was, farming that happened, how do you get the food to the people without the ability to transport and the farmers being scared because they're being shot at?
Simone, what is the political answer here? I mean, I got a lot of letters after we had the bishop on of the Armenian eparchy here in the United States. People want to know, what can we do? I mean, who politically should we be leaning on, both as the United States and as private citizens?
Yeah, I definitely think that to continue to put pressure on the Biden administration to withhold the waiver for Section 907, the Freedom Support Act, continue to be strong in making demands that we simply cannot give Azerbaijan American money if they continue to be aggressive towards Armenians. And there are weekly shootings. And last week, I mean, this is reported every week, an Armenian soldier died. And of course, what they would love is for Armenian soldiers to shoot back. And that's a pretext for war. But Armenians won't, because we want to avoid war. So we just have to keep dealing with the shootings.
And you mentioned that provision. That is the military assistance program, which the United States gives funds to Azerbaijan. Now, this is apparently being slow-walked because the Biden administration is concerned of the ethnic cleansing, potential genocide here. Is there any truth that Washington is getting the message?
We have yet to see it. I mean, I have the same question as you do, Raymond. I have the same exact question. There's all these meetings that are happening. We hear, in Europe, there's, peace treaties trying to be brokered by the UN, Russia, the United States. But to what end? Where are these meetings going? When will it actually end? I'm very curious to see that.
Well, the United States should at the very least demand that blockade stop. I mean, we can't withhold, we send hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine, to try to protect it. Here are fellow Christians dying in a region where they're being starved for 8 months. Nobody says or does anything. So it is kind of infuriating. What about the Armenian allies in the region?
Well, it doesn't seem that Armenia does have many allies, which is why U.S. support is so crucial. We don't really have any reliable neighbors or allies. So,
there were reports. I read reports of. I just read reports, and correct me if I'm wrong, that India, there were warming relations between India and Armenia. Is that true? Could that provide a buffer?
That is true. That is true. And it's again, there's still more information that needs yet to be known about that, but that friendly relationship seems to be emerging because of course India wants to keep checks on Pakistan, who has an alliance with Turkey and Azerbaijan. So
right.
There's like a tension there. So yes, that is true, but we don't have that much information about it. But certainly the possibility for Armenia to receive weapons, military aid and weapons from India is a positive thing.
Before we go, there's a prayer vigil, I know, to pray against this Armenian Christian persecution. That's happening on Friday, August 25th. What can you tell us about that? How can people join?
Yes, please go to spiritualdirection.com/Armenia. Please sign up for this prayer vigil. We really do understand that this is also at the heart a spiritual battle against people who will not give up their Christianity, their Christian faith, or their right to freedom and self-determination in their ancient homeland. So please join me and Dan and Stephanie Burke at the Avila Foundation, and Chris Check from Catholic Answers, and Gia Chacon from For the Martyrs, and all those in the Avila family, as we really we're going to pray Rosary, Divine Mercy Chaplet. Bishop Michael will be there to lead prayers in Armenian from St. Gregory of Narek, who's a doctor of the Catholic Church, number 36. And so we really know that perhaps the greatest force, and I know that John Paul II believed this, and all the saints, that the true power is in spiritual and cultural power. So we really want to storm the gates of heaven with our prayers for the Armenian people, because as we discussed, this is truly a mass famine, ethnic cleansing, and a genocidal aim against the Armenian Christians. So please join us for that prayer vigil. The Hosanna app is starting a novena, on the same day, 9 days of prayer.
Simone Rizkallah, we will leave it there, but I think you're so right when you mentioned John Paul II. He and Maggie Thatcher and President Reagan, they understood that you had to take both policy action in the temporal realm as well as spiritual action simultaneously. I worry that in this situation, there is no policy action. There's nothing clear and concrete. That needs to be remedied. We need to get the political leaders focused on it, and the activists need to focus on what they really want here. But at the least, this blockade has to stop, and maybe that has to be the message. For more information about the prayer vigil against this Armenian Christian persecution, visit spiritualdirection.com/Armenia. For more details. To keep up on what's happening on the ground there, visit philosproject.org/Armenia. Thank you again, Simone.
Thank you.
My next guest is an actress, a wife, and mother of three. She's a former Miss USA winner and is now a successful businesswoman, focusing on women's health and wellness. She's the founder of the lifestyle platform Reshape, and the author of a brand new book, Reshape Your Life. Don't settle because you are worth it. I sat down with her earlier this week to talk about it. Here's my exclusive interview with Ali Landry. Ali, thanks for being here. Before we get to the book, I have to start. You're a fellow Louisianian at the other L.A. Now, I grew up in New Orleans, but you grew up in Cajun country. Tell me about how that shaped the woman you've become. Your dad worked in the oil fields. I know your mom was your first inspiration, a bit of an entrepreneur.
Yes. Well, first of all, I have such a connection to my roots. I have a beautiful, large Catholic family. There's 10 children on my dad's side, 8 on my mom's side. Everybody lives on 2 big patches of land. I call it one-stop shopping. I just park the car, one home, and then I just go house to visit everyone. And opening the book, honestly, the first 2 chapters is truly a love letter to Louisiana, to the I get emotional, to the community that raised me, to all the strong women that I had around me. And I think I appreciate it even more now that I'm away from it all. So to this day, I honestly still consider myself, just a small town girl.
What role did your Catholic faith play in your life when you were growing up? I know it is such a, for Louisianians, it's such a part of our lived and daily existence and communal life.
It really is. It's a part. I'll tell you this. I feel like everybody in our area in Southwest Louisiana is Catholic. So I honestly think that it was something I took for granted. And of course, went to church every Sunday, and I went to a Catholic school and was taught by nuns, and I had, my faith as that foundation. But it was not until I was an adult that I really evaluated my life and recommitted to my faith in the most profound way. And I'm really, when I did that, God showed up in my life in a completely different way and really walked alongside me in the journey.
Ali, the new book, Reshape Your Life, it's really all about transformation. Now, you've had so much success in your life, Miss USA, you're acting, but you've also experienced loss and tragedy. And you write in the book, when life turns upside down, you can feel dizzy and off balance, like you're falling. What I found is that it helps to tether yourself to what you know to be true in your core. For me, that's my faith. I began to pray like never before. Only God could comfort me and give me the peace and healing I so desired and transform my heart. God was present for me. It has been the only time in my life when I heard God's voice so clearly, and I think it is because I was so fully dependent on Him. Tell us about that time and how important it is in life to be tethered to truth.
Really the book is all about reshapes, right? I feel, for me, I never want to see a woman settle for less than what she deserves, right? And the book really helps you identify areas in your life that just are not serving you. And I share with you the tools to help you get to the other side and really create those true and lasting reshapes. But at the core of it all, honestly, is my faith. And it's when, there were times, there have been many reshapes, but, I've had some around betrayal and love, right? And tragedy and loss, where they brought me to my knees and I did not have the answers. And I honestly had to completely surrender my own will. Like I couldn't do life the way I wanted to do it. I had to, because I felt so helpless in those moments that I had to honestly give it to God. And when I did that, that's when I heard, I was in so much pain, right? But that's when I heard His voice so clearly. And that's when the transformation started to happen within myself. I was able to sit in that quiet, sit in that pain, and just I was like, God, listen, I've made many mistakes in my life. I can't make any more. Or I have to be able to move through this with happiness and joy and positivity. I can't have resentment. I can't feel anger. Like, I want the best life for myself. But your plan is way bigger than mine. So just hold my hand and take me through. And I get chills because I don't get an opportunity to speak about that very often. And so I do it in the book. And I'm so happy we get to talk about this here, because that is where it was my relationship with God and my faith that really brought me through the toughest times. If I didn't have that, I don't know if I could have got through, I would say, in the miraculous way that I did.
Ali, you also talk about forgiveness, and not only forgiveness for others, but forgiving ourselves for past mistakes. What would you say to those struggling with their past and the things that or choices they've made in their past?
I even look at my own life and I think, I definitely went to the wayside. I've definitely made bad choices. I've definitely made mistakes. But I have to say now, standing where I'm standing, I embrace those times and I look at them as part of the fabric of my life. It was wonderful learning experiences because I allowed them to be. And I think forgiveness is so important. I had a really hard time understanding what that was, especially when someone betrayed me and I had to learn to move forward with forgiveness. I honestly thought that forgiving would mean that I'm saying, like, that's okay what you did to me. Like, I'm good with that. But that's not what it was. Forgiving that person allowed me to move forward, right? It allowed me not to carry anything forward in my life because they weren't worrying about it. It's not an easy thing to do. It actually took me a while to like figure it out and for that concept to land on me. But again, like I really tried to walk the reader through as best I can through my personal experiences and give them those tools of how to kind of maneuver through these situations in their own lives.
The book, it deals really with the health of the mind, the body, the heart, and the soul. After years of working in Hollywood, acting and landing your dream job of a talk show host, your health and wellness took a sharp downturn. What happened? Yeah. And how did you come upon this idea of reshape?
Yeah, that's honestly where it all started, like the concept of reshape. I was on, a daily talk show. I was on Fox. It was a panel. I was, so excited. But that kind of schedule was really tough. It's up at 5, live at 9. I thought by the time I got off at 10, I was going to get in some exercise. I was going to go to the grocery store, cook this dinner, pick up the kid, have this whole great day. In reality, I would get home exhausted. I would climb back into bed. The best way I could describe it, and I think women, I was in my mid-40s at the time, I felt off. I felt sick, maybe, but not sick enough to go to the doctor, right? Just didn't feel myself. And so I actually went to a naturopathic doctor and did my first full blood panel. And I had so many aha moments and really saw where I was off. I was experiencing, poor digestion, poor sleep, chronic pain issues, mild depression, low energy. I felt like I was living half a life. And once I started making some adjustments with the guidance of the naturopathic doctor and many others that came into place after that, I experienced that next level of health. But I was about to throw in the towel. My girlfriends, when I asked them, they're like, yeah, Ali, like, we're getting older. That's what happens. And for me, that just didn't sit well. I was like, I'm 40-something years young. Like, I have this great life in front of me. I want it to be vibrant and amazing, and I want more. And so I just dug in and did the work. And that's part of what I share, because I know it's possible.
Yeah. Yeah. You've spoken and written about your 17-year marriage to film director Alejandro Monteverde. Of course, people will be very familiar with his work, Little Boy and Bella and so many other great films. You have 3 children together. Tell me about the importance of that relationship, how it changed your life.
I was coming off of a betrayal that we spoke about earlier, and that's when I completely surrendered my life, my relationship mostly to God. I was just like, I've made bad choices. I was very specific about what I wanted in a partner. Very, very specific. One of them was I wanted them to be equally yoked. I prayed for him in great detail. At the time I was reading Purpose-Driven Life by Rick Warren, and I was doing the workbook, and that was like such therapy for me. And we met at a theology class. Alejandro and I met at a theology class. We actually, I honestly felt we were both writing in a diary at the same time. And I truly feel with everything in my heart that God delivered him to me. He delivered this man to me. And we do not have a perfect marriage by all means. I don't want people to think that. But at the end of the day, he is the leader of our family. He keeps us so close to God and reminds us like daily gratitude, appreciation, like always looking to him for all of our blessings, right? And I just have utmost respect for him, even with his projects that he's doing. Like you mentioned, he has a new one that's coming out. We're actually going to Rome to show it to the Pope, which I'm so excited on Sunday. And just the projects he puts out in the world are so hopeful and so beautiful and just raises humanity. It's an honor to be married to him. And I take zero credit, 000. Honestly, I went to God in that moment, and that was part of that reshape, and that was the result.
As I mentioned earlier, or alluded to, you have not been untouched by tragedy you and Alejandro. In 2015, and you devote an entire chapter in the book to this, the Reshape Through Pain. You and Alejandro received a call that your father-in-law, Alejandro's dad, and his brother were kidnapped near their hometown in Mexico, and sadly, they were both killed. And you write in the book, the grief and the pain felt like we were carrying a building on our shoulders. It was the greatest weight I ever experienced, pulling me down all the time. Losing them changed everything. I was not the same person. In tragedy, faith is truly put to the test. Honestly, that was the most difficult thing in all of this for me. Suffering had sent me to my knees in prayer so many times, and now it was hard to pray. I initially felt betrayed by God. I tried and tried, but I could not understand. And you go on to mention how Jesus said from the cross, "Why have you forsaken me?" How did you and Alejandro deal with this horrible tragedy? And talk to me a little bit about how your faith was challenged and how you overcame that.
During that time, it's so hard, you're in that space, and I'm hearing it again. And during that time, to lose one person in that way is inconceivable. But to lose two, you have no idea how to even mourn. You, as a human being, to process that is really, really difficult. And we were really struggling. And my father-in-law was such a devout man. It's so beautiful. Honestly, when they took him, I thought they would fall in love with him and they would return him. I didn't think it was going to end the way it did. So when we lost him, we were confused. We were angry with God because he took a good one. And we met with many priests, many spiritual advisors. I mean, we did so much work on ourselves, just try to understand. And it's so funny. I was hosting a Catholic conference, and Alejandro wasn't even open to even sit in the audience. He stayed up in the room. He was with me. And Father Michael Gately got up, and he was talking about his book, 33 Days to Morning Glory, and he was talking about Mary and the Son and bringing us back to Jesus and union. And I don't know what happened in that moment. Again, I have chills. I knew that I needed Alejandro to talk to Father Michael Gately. And I was thinking, Mary is the way. I've never had a devotion to Mary. I really didn't. I would just go straight to the big man. I brought them together. He shared with us the book. We started doing the book, 33 Days to Morning Glory. And honestly, Mary felt like a safe choice for us because it was too sensitive, what we were feeling, to go directly to God. We just couldn't. So Mary, through that devotion, gently guided us back into union with her Son. And that's when the healing began. After doing that devotion. And now I feel like because of that tragedy, we really have changed the way we walk through this world. I mean, we definitely make different choices. We really try to be super present and in the moment, knowing that life is so short and could be taken away in an instant. We really try daily to surrender our lives into God's will. Being in this entertainment business, it seems very glamorous, but there's a lot of uncertainty when it comes to finances and jobs, and sometimes jobs are few and far between, and you're always it's always that balance. Right. So really putting our faith in God, and He's always delivered. He really has. It's amazing.
No, it's a great part of the book, and worth reading. I think the journey is worth it for that chapter, though there are other commendable chapters too. But at the beginning of the first chapter, you use one of my favorite quotes from St. Catherine of Siena: "Be who God meant you to be, and you will set the world on fire." What do you want readers to take, Ali, from Reshape Your Life, and what's the message that you want them to hold dearest as they go through this?
I mean, when you say that quote, I love it so much because often I feel like as we get older, we lose that fire, right? Those things that bring us ultimate joy because we get older and life starts to happen and we focus on the bills and the jobs and the kids and everything. But we have to remember those things that set our souls on fire, right? In my husband's movie, there's a quote there that says, you can either serve your passion or you can serve your weakness, not both. So I truly believe in serving the passion, right? And really that is that pretty much describes everything that the book is about. Like really, not settling for a half life. Like we have one life, and I just want us all to really try our best to make it a masterpiece.
I love it. Ali Landry, thank you for being here. And by the way, your husband's movie, the Mother Cabrini film, is incredible. Which I've seen bits and pieces of it, not the entire film, but what I've seen is pretty stellar. Reshape Your Life. Don't settle because you are worth it by Ali Landry is available now at bookstores everywhere and online. Ali, hope you'll come back sometime soon and come visit us in New Orleans.
I would love it. Thank you so much. Thank you.
That is all the time we have for now. Be sure to catch us next week. Until then, we'll be scouting the world over for all that is seen and unseen. On behalf of the staff and crew of EWTN News, thank you for watching. I'm Raymond Arroyo. Bye now.